All right, looks like we're live. Uh, that didn't work the way it normally does. Okay. So if you can see me, please post in the chat where you're watching from. I'm coming to you from Cucuta, Colombia here. I'm standing out on the balcony of this place I just rented. And oh, good. All right. So you guys can hear me. Great. Fantastic. Thank you very much for watching the Hot Zone. It's been a busy day already for me. I've had a bunch of hits on Newsmax and I've got more coming up. So I've got to keep this a little bit shorter than normal. If you've got questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat, but we can't star them because I haven't got the same setup I have at home and haven't had a chance to get that all set up yet. So I'll try to get to your comments and your questions as they come up. So again, thank you for watching. I appreciate all of you. And it's pretty quiet here, honestly, in Cucuta. I'm right on the border with Venezuela. It's Venezuela back there. There's a ton of Venezuelans in Cucuta. Cucuta is a city of about 700,000 people. And at one point, there were probably more Venezuelans than there were Cucuteños. However, nowadays, a lot of those, oh, plane just went by. That's interesting. Um, a lot of the Venezuelans that fled Venezuela were like 8 million of them that left, and many of those came out through Cucuta. Uh, so Ginger, Indiana is asking, were there casualties in Venezuela? Yes, there were. Venezuela said somewhere between 25 and 40 were killed in the strikes that they made in Venezuela over on the invasion, not invasion, attack, whatever it was, the precision operation that they did to take out Maduro. Because, and I'll explain to you what caused that, why that is. We'll talk about that in a minute. As I was saying, there a lot of the Venezuelans that were here in Cucuta have moved on because it's hard to make a living in a place where there are so many Venezuelans all trying to do the same thing, like sell candy on the street corner and stuff like that. One thing they're not selling on the street corner is gold. And folks, our sponsor for today is Preserve Gold. Thank you to them. Preserve Gold sells physical gold and silver. If you don't have any of that in your portfolio, you might want to think about getting some. It's turned out to be a really good choice for people, especially as they are nearing or getting into retirement, because it helps to kind of smooth out the troughs and valleys in your stock market portfolio. If you've just got mutual funds in your 401k, it might be a good idea to put some of that into gold. And the best way to do that is to put it into physical gold and silver. And that's what Preserve Gold specializes in. So if you want to find out more about that, go to preservegold.com/hotzone or just text the word Chuck to 50505 and they will explain it all to you, break it all down. They're very nice to work with. They're very kind people and everything like that. So this is Cucuta over here. Well, let's get rid of the Preserve Gold ad. Thank you to Preserve Gold for being our sponsor. This is Cucuta here, and it's again city of about 700,000 people. Very nice. I actually like it here a lot. There's a real cool church right there, a big Catholic church that I keep meaning to go see. And today we might go see that. But I'm going to go in here and actually sit down at the table because I'm afraid I'm going to knock my computer off the balcony out there, and that would be really, really bad. So I'm just going to go from here. I hope you don't mind. I have a whole bunch of videos and stuff to show you, but unfortunately, I can't get that working right on the computer here. And so I'm going to need to spend some more time getting that, and I'll have to get it next time. But again, if you have questions, just let me know. And I think that somebody just put up a question. How far are you from the equator? I don't have any idea exactly how far I am from the equator. Um, that's a really good question, but I'm not sure actually. I don't know if I can go over here. Maybe I can go over here and add a media source. Oh no, that's Oh, I see. I see. Okay. Well, I can't do it right now. I would show you on the map, but you can look on the map and see where Kukutai is. I would say it's pretty far from the equator in terms of like driving or something like that. If you were flying straight line distance, it'd probably be an hour, a couple hours flight, maybe a little longer than that to get to the equator. But it is quite warm here. It's in the mid to high 80s. A little overcast today, which is nice. And when the sun comes out, it really gets hot. So I want to talk to you about what's going on. The title of the uh, podcast is, panic. The panic is not, I just want to be very clear. The panic is not here in Cucuta. The panic is not necessarily even in Venezuela, although there is some of that going on. Um, the panic that we're seeing is actually in China and Russia. And I want to explain why. Let's go over to my notes here. So, what we saw in Venezuela last night, or I'm sorry, night before last, that operation was much bigger in terms of its impact than just Venezuela. It made a huge impact on our other adversaries in other places around the globe. So in China, especially Russia, Iran, they're all taking notice. And it's not just notice of the fact that the United States now actually has the will and the wherewithal we've always had the wherewithal, but now we have the will to strike our adversaries when and if we desire. But on top of that, uh, they had all, and I look, if you've been watching this podcast, you've heard me talk about this before. Russia and China were looking at Venezuela the same way the United States and Europe looks at Ukraine. What I mean is they're looking at it as a laboratory, a combat laboratory. So the United States has gotten an incredible amount of hard data, valuable hard data out of the war in Ukraine without having to spend the life of even one American soldier. No blood at all. And you've heard me make the case that it actually was a really smart thing to do to spend 10% of our military budget for 1 year over the course of 3 years in Ukraine to get the information that we were able to get about how Western NATO standard military equipment stacked up against Russian military equipment, Soviet standard. What we found is that there's no contest. That it's not that American tanks are better than Russian tanks. They are, but I mean, you would kind of expect that. No, American armored fighting vehicles, like the Bradley infantry fighting vehicle, are better than Russian tanks. That's not supposed to happen. A tank should be able to just clean the floor with an infantry fighting vehicle, but our infantry fighting vehicles were better than Russia's tanks. Our, missiles, as far as their precision goes, we can put a missile through a particular window in a particular building. The Russians' precision fires can maybe land within a mile of the place that they're targeting. That's the difference. So that's what we have been learning. Not only that, but of course the innovation that Ukraine has given us in terms of drone tactics and procedures and everything. I mean, we've learned so much from that. So Russia and China were looking to learn more, just that same kind of data from Venezuela if the United States came in. And so beforehand, over the last couple of years, actually, Russia and China have been sending their highest quality air defense assets, their most advanced air defense weaponry to Venezuela in order because they expected that something like this might happen. And they figured that when it did, they would find out that their great air defense assets would easily swat down F-35s and F-22 Raptors. That didn't actually happen. Uh, the Russian S-300s. I mean, the China even made a video about this. Again, I wanted to show you all these videos, but China made a video about this 20 days ago, just just 3 weeks ago. China made a video showing that America wants to invade Venezuela, but what they don't understand is that Venezuela has a ring of steel provided by China that will devastate the American military, and they're so afraid of Chinese military hardware that it's likely that they're not even going. They don't even know what to do next. This is what the Chinese video said, and I even got it translated into English and everything. I'll show it to you later. I'll put it up over at chuckholton.com. How about that? But the air defense that they provided to Venezuela was intended to prove the in combat conditions how good those Russian and Chinese weapons would perform. So they included Russian supplied weapons like the S-300 VM, which is one of their more advanced batteries of long range air defense missiles. The BUK M2E systems and operational Su-30 Mk2 fighter flanker jets. I'm sorry, flanker fighter jets. Say that 10 times fast. Flanker fighter jets. And not only that, they gave them thousands of man pads. That's man portable aerial defense systems. So like a Stinger missile, but a Russian version of that. The Chinese gave them their best air defense radars that were supposed to be able to see an F-35, which is a stealth fighter. So, and they said that it could see an F-35 from 150 kilometers away and then strike it down before it even got into range of the target. Well, they found out in about 4 minutes on the night before last that all of their hopes and dreams were for nothing. They were dashed. All of those very sophisticated air defense uh, assets that they gave to Venezuela were destroyed in a matter of minutes, and they never saw it coming. And that's due to what Dan Kane said was a multi-layered strategy where we started with Space Force and Cyber Command by doing cyber attacks on Venezuelan infrastructure, knocking out power supply, knocking out the lights, knocking out, even some of those radar assets and things like that. Thank you for that $20, Melissa. That's very kind. And Rich Brady had a question. Can you hear any kind of gunfire from there? The only fireworks we hear from here are actual fireworks. The fighting that went on 2 nights ago in Caracas is about an 18-hour bus ride from where I'm sitting. So no, I mean, Venezuela is a very large country. We're clear over in the western part of the country in Colombia. And so, no, we're not hearing any fight. We have heard some fireworks last night. I saw people dancing in the streets. There was a guy who was very entertainingly making up a folk song about Donald Trump taking out Maduro in Spanish, singing it. He was a little tipsy, I think. So the people that I've talked to here have been pretty. They're obviously very happy, but they are also very cautious. They're not. Most of them planning to go back into Venezuela anytime soon because the United States does not control Venezuela. This is a thing that a lot of people haven't figured out. As a matter of fact, I just had to correct a Newsmax host on the air about this because the the host said, now that the United States is in control of Venezuela, well, we're not in control of Venezuela. We don't have any troops on the ground there. And we went in and performed a law enforcement operation and took Nicolás Maduro and his wife, Cilia, out, took them to New York, did a perp walk with them, and they're now in prison awaiting sentencing or awaiting their court dates, court hearings for drug trafficking. But in Venezuela, we did what we had to do and then we left. We didn't leave anybody here. So we're not in control of the country in any way, shape, or form. The Supreme Court of Venezuela today swore in the vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, as the acting president here. And Delcy Rodriguez has, she's said, well, I'm willing to talk to the United States. We're willing to negotiate or whatever. But she's also calling up the guard and mobilizing the military and saying we need to be ready to fight for our country. Uh, Now, in my estimation, probably about, I don't know, perhaps a third at the most of the people in Venezuela are actually supporters of Maduro. Probably about a third. That's about my best guess. And if you talk to people here in Cucuta, if you talk to Venezuelans outside of Venezuela, of course, 99% of them are going to be against Maduro because they left because of Maduro. They left because they were eating their pets to survive, but that they blame that on Maduro. And it's not likely that if the United States did send the Marines in to Venezuela, that we'd have a lot of fighting. There'd be some, but we don't want to do that because that would just lead to an insurgency. And if we learned anything from Afghanistan, it's that it's very hard to win an insurgency. You almost can't do it. You can't kill your way out of this problem. This is not Panama. Panama is, the invasion of Panama in 1989. We took over the country, but we already had like 22,000 troops in Panama before the invasion. It's the first time in history when the United States has invaded a country that they already occupied. Does that make sense? And there's only 4 million people in Panama, and so uh, you know, it was fairly easy for us to take over that country and to stay there until it took about 2 weeks to get Noriega out and then turn it over to the interim government and leave. The military left. I was there for about 2.5 weeks during the invasion of Panama. Well, Venezuela is a much larger country. They've got almost, well, 30 something million people. It's much larger in terms of territory by long shots, probably more than 10 times larger than Panama. So it would be a very, very big uh, operation to try to bring in U.S. troops to take over Venezuela and to actually hold the country. So President Trump said, we're going to run the country until such a time as we can get a new uh, legitimate government installed. And I hope that that comes to fruition, but it's going to be fraught with risk because as I said on Newsmax today, we took out Alibaba and we left the 40 thieves. We still have not taken out the rest of the infrastructure of the illegitimate government that has been in control of Venezuela since the elections in 2022 or whenever that was. We still are not, that we took out Maduro and his wife, but his whole hierarchy is still in place and they're still in control. As a matter of fact, there are Venezuelans who have sent me these. Uh, let's see if I can find it. Sent me these text messages that they're getting from. I actually got this one sent to me by Greta Van Susteren, but let's see if I can. Yeah, there we go. This is a text message that is being sent out to people inside Venezuela right now. And of course, you'll see it's in Spanish there. But what it says is anybody who is celebrating the great aggression on our country, on our homeland, by the United States is going to be arrested for treason uh, to the country, and so that it goes on to just threaten people. So the Venezuelans are still inside Venezuela. That's why you're not seeing massive protests inside the country. It's that people are still afraid because the government is still in control. Now, the president has a problem. Well, Fletch is asking, will it devolve into civil war? It's certainly possible. I talked to some of the soldiers that I know who have uh, escaped Venezuela and have defected to the United States or to here in Colombia. I've talked to a couple of them. I'm going to be interviewing some of them later on. What they're telling me is that they all plan to go back in and fight for their country if they have to, and they're just waiting for the word from their leadership to go back in. If they did that, a large portion of the current leadership, or no, I'm sorry, the current military of Venezuela would likely join them, and there might be some civil war. As I told you, I think yesterday on my live, when you take out a dictator, it leaves a large power vacuum, and other entities fight each other to try to fill that vacuum. So it's likely that this will get bloody inside Venezuela. But for now, it has not, because the current regime is still in power. The problem that President Trump has with that is this: Delcy Rodriguez is not indicted as a a narco trafficker. With her not being a narco trafficker, her not being indicted as one, we can't use the same excuse to come in and take her out. President Nicolás Maduro was under indictment, and his wife, by the United States for years. And so we were really just serving an arrest warrant by the Drug Enforcement Administration that was issued by the court in New York State. So it was not a military operation, it was a law enforcement operation with military backing. If we were to continue this, it would turn into a military operation. Now we could continue to strike drug trafficking uh, sites or routes, things that were affiliated with the Cartel de los Soles or the Tren de Aragua gangs. We could still continue to strike those in Venezuela, and that would not kind of cross the line into outright war. But now the Supreme Court has put Delcy Rodriguez in as the interim president. So unless she is willing to play ball and actually work with the United States, then we're going to have to start thinking about hardball options, kinetic options to finish the job. But we're nowhere near finished right now. And the people here in Cucuta know that. So because of the text messages, like I showed you, because of the uncertainty that still is rife inside Venezuela, well, a lot of the Venezuelans that live here say, I'm not going back. The guy that cut my hair last night, it was Venezuelan. And I said, are you going to go back? And he said, no, I've been here for years now. I've built a life. I've built a business. I don't want to give that up to go back to Venezuela. And I think a lot of people are going to feel that way. Although many people will go back because they left their family and their everything they knew behind in Venezuela. But it's going to be more of an economic decision than a patriotic decision. That being the case, President Trump, if he wants the 700,000 Venezuelans who now live in the United States to decide to go back home, he's going to have to work on the economic equation for them and make it worth their while to go back to Venezuela, or at least not worth their while to stay where they are. Now, another question from Ronald: did they have to take out his bodyguards? Yes, they did. According to Dan Kane and the information that was put out about the mission, they executed the actual raid on the residence where Nicolás Maduro was staying in 46 seconds. 46 seconds. That's what I was hearing on the news talked about earlier today. Local news here was just amazed at that. That means from the time the skids from the helicopters hit the rooftop or hit the ground in the street or wherever they landed, it took 47 seconds for them to get into the house, neutralize his bodyguards, and grab Maduro just as he was trying to slam the door on his safe room. There's an interesting video that people are playing here in Cucuta of Nicolas Maduro giving a interview in his car, which is weird. But he was giving an interview in his car a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about this great safe room that he had and how impenetrable it was. And oh yeah, if they come for me, I'm just going to go to my safe room. They'll never be able to get me out of there. Well, they got into the residence so fast that he wasn't able to get from his bedroom to his safe room before they grabbed him. Now, in the press briefing yesterday, uh, I think it was Nicolas Maduro. I'm sorry, it was Pete Hegseth. Maybe it was Dan Kane. I don't remember which, who said uh, if he had made it into his safe room and locked the door, it. Whoops, we just got disconnected. Okay, we're back. Sorry, we got disconnected there for a minute. Uh, Dan Kane said if he had made it into his safe room and locked the door, it would have taken them all of about 40 seconds more to blow that door and get him out of there. They went in prepared to take him out of that safe room if he managed to make it in. Okay. So, yes, they said that there were several firefights on the way in where the helicopters were engaged by ground fire and return fire. And then there were several other uh, engagements on the way out, firefights where they had to defend themselves as they were leaving the country with Nicolas Maduro. So that's, I mean, uh, all of that happening, not losing one piece of American military hardware, not losing one American soldier, not even one injury. That is as flawless an operation as you will ever find. And it's very unlikely you'll ever see an operation that flawless ever again. Operations just typically don't go like that. But this one did. Thank God it did. And thank God that they were able to minimize the loss of life. Okay. We have a question here. Is it possible that the Russians gave a heads up to the Minister of Defense? No, because I mean, even though the Russians expected that something was going to happen, they didn't know exactly when it was going to happen. So they didn't, it's not like we called Russia to deconflict them as we were on our way in. They didn't even notify Congress, the president said, because they were too worried about leaks, that it would have leaked, right? Now, PC says, Chuck, how long could he get in jail if he's convicted? Hard to say, but let's just take Manuel Noriega as an example. Manuel Noriega got 20 years in a federal penitentiary in Miami. He served his 20 years. Then he was extradited to France, where he was convicted of more crimes, and he spent a year in jail in France. And then he was extradited back to Panama, where he was put back in prison in Panama for more crimes, where he lived out the rest of his life. So it's very likely that Nicolas Maduro will spend the rest of his life behind bars, and he's not that old, really. So he's looking at probably 30 years or more behind bars, because it's likely that even if he serves his entire sentence in the United States, he gets sent back to Venezuela. By then, the current Venezuelan government will put him in prison for the rest of his life. He's not a popular figure here. Uh, Jim Bellingham says, "Why did we need him alive?" Well, because you typically don't serve arrest warrants by killing the person that you're trying to arrest. They had legal justification to arrest him. They did not have legal justification to kill him. So they could have just dropped a bomb on his residence, obviously, but that would have actually been an illegal act of war. So that's why. Uh, so thank you for whoever is posting the comments there. Um, so somebody just asked Saint, okay, if if Rodriguez asked Trump to step in and help get the government back under a true government leadership using the military, would that need congressional approval? Probably, probably so. It would it would probably go beyond what the president can order in terms of a sort of preemptive strike. Okay, uh, so yes, probably so. Of course, lots of Congress critters on the left are just setting their hair on fire over this and saying this was illegal. This, um, you know, this was an act of war. It was war crime. They're using all the superlatives that they can come up with. But if you recall, during the Biden administration, the Biden Justice Department arrested and extradited the former president of Honduras uh, out of Honduras to the United States, and he's currently serving jail time in there. We have this is something we've done. I go back to Noriega in 1989 and 90. We went in, we arrested Noriega, we brought him out. There you go. It was not a war, and it's not a war. There's no fighting going on right now. There's nobody to fight because the United States left. They also opened up the airspace around Venezuela. You remember that a couple of weeks ago, President Trump closed the airspace over Venezuela, and so commercial airliners quit flying for the most part. Many of them quit flying through Venezuela. After he did that, I actually flew to Trinidad and was a little horrified to watch on the map on the plane as we flew right across Venezuela, where supposed to be closed airspace. And I was like, "Oh, great, we're going to get shot down." But now they've opened it back up again, and that probably means that they're not planning uh, imminent strike on Venezuela from the air anytime soon. There may be more strikes coming, but if they were planning to do them today, they wouldn't have lifted the airspace restrictions. Okay. So yeah. Okay. This next question. I see. Let's see. Replace pinned message. If might Russia try a similar operation to capture Zelensky? Well, I've seen that bandied about on social media, and it makes me laugh because Russia has tried to do that about 4 times against Zelensky, and they fail every time. They tried at the beginning of the war. They tried to snatch Zelensky, and they failed. Russia does not have the wherewithal to capture Zelensky. If anything, Russia would just try to kill him because they are at war with Venezuela, I mean, with Ukraine, and there's no reason for them to try to. There's no reason for them to capture him over killing him, but they have tried to capture and to kill him multiple times and have failed. Russia does not have the ability to do it. Okay, so no, it's not going to happen. Russia's not going to do that. I've even seen Russian media saying, "Yeah, well, we ought to just do that to Zelensky." Yeah, good luck. You tried, you failed. Les Fennison says, "How can they hold Maduro in New York City when Mamdani is in charge and wants to release him?" I think it's just sweet, sweet irony that they took him to a city that's controlled by a communist to prosecute a communist. But they're not prosecuting him for being a communist. And so, obviously the mayor's office and the district court that issued the warrant for Maduro's arrest are two very, very different things. And Mamdani doesn't have any say over what they do. So, just the fact that they're co-located, it's got to burn Mamdani. He actually came out and was very angry. By the way, there was a very big not pro Venezuela, pro Maduro protest in New York City last night with thousands of people coming out and chanting "Free Maduro, free Maduro, free Maduro." And they had protests like that in San Francisco and in Portland and in Dallas and in Minneapolis and like all over the place. Somebody went and did the research and found out that, oh, you know what? All of the signs for those protests are exactly the same. The signs people are carrying, they're all exactly the same signs printed in the same by the same print shop even. distributed around the country. And then they did a little more research into, I wonder who's paying for these protests. And it turns out they're being paid for by a billionaire who lives in China, who has close ties to the CCP and the PLA. And so essentially, China is funding protests against the US government inside the United States. And they're not even trying to hide it. It's like they're just open out in the open about it. Now, one other thing I wanted to point out, which I thought was, well, let's just say ironic, is when the election took place in Venezuela, I think again that was like 2022. Nicolás Maduro lost badly, and then just decided to stay in power. Thank you for that, KHJVN upstate, whatever. Liberals are upset about some technicality and would rather all Venezuelans continue to live under a dictator because they don't like Trump. Of course. And if Trump had become friends with Maduro, the left would have, been setting their hair on fire and screaming bloody murder over that. So they don't have any scruples. They don't have any actual, you know, principles that they stand on. Their only principle is we're against whatever Donald Trump does. And I think we need to be cautious that we don't do the same thing with our tribe, that we're just going to be for anything President Trump does and against anything the Democrats do, no matter, if the Democrats go out and cure cancer and save baby seals, and we're going to be against them. We're going to lambaste them as much as possible. No, if somebody does something that's moral, we should say so. If they do something wrong, we should say so. And it doesn't matter what team they're on. But kudos to President Trump for this operation, though, because he's, again, I'm very happy with the way that this went off. I think it was the right thing to do. It sent just the right message to China. See, China, let's say that 2 nights ago, when the United States went to invade or to come into Venezuelan airspace, that our F-35s all got shot down. All of our aircraft got shot up. We lost all kinds of soldiers. It was an absolute debacle. That would have been just the thing that China was looking for as a confirmation that it's time for them to invade Taiwan. Aha, our technology beats American technology, and so it's time to go for Taiwan. But after what actually happened 2 nights ago, China is now thinking twice about, oh man, our stuff is not going to stand up to American hardware if we go for Taiwan. So it's less likely that they will go after Taiwan now than it was 2 nights ago. That's exactly what we want. So what I was saying before is that when the election happened and it was rampant election fraud, obvious to everybody that had 3 brain cells to rub together, there were something like 58 countries around the globe that condemned Venezuela, condemned Nicolás Maduro for staying in power and for not letting it be free and fair elections. Countries like France and Norway and Sweden and Spain and, of course, Colombia did too, et cetera, et cetera. Well, about 11 of those countries are now condemning the United States for taking Maduro out of power. And this is the thing, when you're talking to your friends and they're saying, we have no legal right to take out a sitting president from another country and arrest him and take him to the United States. So we have no legal justification to do that. Well, what you need to say is, well, you're right about that, except he's not the legal president of the country. He is an interloper who stayed in power and refused to hand over the reins of power when he was voted out of office. So he is nothing more than a narco-terrorist, a gang leader, and a criminal. Point, period, end of story. He's not the president of Venezuela, and he wasn't ever since he lost the election. So That's what you need to say to your friends when they're going on about it. Uh, Question: Are you planning to go to or near Iran anytime soon? I will be near Iran in June. I know for sure. It depends on what happens over there. If now something on the another topic, not on the Venezuela topic, but we are seeing a buildup of U.S. forces going from the United States over toward the Middle East, and we're talking units that typically would not get deployed over there unless we were about to do some sort of major military operation like the one we just did in Venezuela. Uh, so, for example, it appears, we don't know for sure, but it appears that the 1st Ranger Battalion, 1st to 75th, is being deployed to the Middle East. We think the Middle East. Last we saw, the flights were going over to Europe. They're certainly not going to send them over to Poland or something. It might be something that they're going to do in Syria, Iraq, or Iran, um, maybe Yemen, but not likely. I think the biggest likelihood is that we're gearing up for another strike on Iran because Iran is teetering. The regime over there is just teetering on the edge of collapse. And so it is a not a sure thing, but it's certainly a possible scenario you could see taking place where Israel and the United States team up to go back there and finish the job on the ground in Iran. But again, it could be something in Syria or Iraq. So we'll just have to keep watching that. Okay. Sam asks, are the internal security forces still strong enough to repress the internal protest movement? Will this actually change the overall socialist regime? They are still strong enough to repress the protest movement because the protests are not, we're not seeing mass protest inside Venezuela right now. It's just not happening. And that is indicative of the fact that America is not in control of Venezuela, like President Trump said. He said that Marco Rubio was going to be running Venezuela for the time being. But Marco Rubio's not, he's not president of Venezuela now. He's not running Venezuela in any meaningful way. Again, Delcy Rodriguez indicated that, hey, we can talk. She's willing to talk to the United States and maybe come up with a diplomatic solution. But, you know, they're not out of the regime has not fallen there yet. Texas Bully Mom says, let's see if I can, I guess I can't pin that. Thank you for the $10. Where is Maduro's wife being, go away. Where's Maduro's wife being held and would her trial be separate from his? I haven't heard how things will play out for her. And thanks for your amazing work. I believe she's being held in the same facility as her husband. I don't think they're being held together in the same cell necessarily, but I believe they are. From everything I've heard says they're being held in the same place. I don't know if she's going to be. Uh, wow, can you hear that? That's the loudest taxi on planet Earth. I'm 11 floors up, and that music is coming from a car the size of a kitchen table. It's unbelievable how they can pack so much volume into one small space. So yeah, I don't know how things are going to play out if she'll be tried separately or together. It's a good question. All right, so Thaddeus Russell says, "Do you think America should be the world's policeman?" Well, people say that as if it's a bad thing, like, oh, the United States doesn't need to be the world's policeman. But the United States has been the guarantor of global security, at the very least on the high seas, since World War II. And so, because of that, we got to set the rules of the game geopolitically. By giving that up, we forfeit our role in setting the rules of the game. And again, when a powerful entity leaves, there's going to be a vacuum of power and somebody's going to come in to try to fill that vacuum. And it's likely going to be countries that don't think like us, that are adversarial to the United States. And they will very quickly rewrite the rules of global order to the point where it's very bad for American national security. So, short answer, yes. I think the United States should continue to guarantee security, at least on the high seas. Next question from Tim Lobbs. What kind of a message does this extraction send to Colombia and Brazil? Well, Colombia's been awful quiet. They they did. Gustavo Petro put out a denunciation of the attack, as you would expect, and they did send some troops down to the border. We saw troops arrayed along the border last night, but they're not like on high alert or anything. They're standing around bored out of their skulls. It's my reminder of why I got out of the military, because it's uh mostly just standing around being bored. So it does send a message, especially to Colombia. President Trump very clearly, so he was asked about that in the press conference, and he said, "Yeah, Gustavo Petro needs to watch his ass." He said, "That's a quote from the president," uh, and he's, now is it likely the United States is going to go in and remove Gustavo Petro? Well, Petro has not been indicted as a narco trafficker yet, so that would have to come first. We'd have to wait and see that. I think the reason they're playing that music so loud is because they're driving around celebrating what's going on. And I'm going to have to wrap this up pretty quick because I've got another live coming up before long as well. So here's another question. Let's pin this message. Sorry, I think there was another pin message that I missed. So if the mod can pin that back again, I'll answer that. What's the position of the area countries that have benefited from Venezuela Petrocaribe fuel loan program? That loan program stopped years ago. And so those countries, which was Honduras and Nicaragua and Haiti and Trinidad, I mean, there were other countries that all got subsidized fuel from Venezuela. Venezuela hasn't been able to do that for a long time because their output of petroleum dropped to such a low level. KP says, you explained that China toys failed this test, but has this event hamstrung Russia, China, and Iran in other ways that may hurt worse? Well, Iran for sure. Hezbollah had a pretty heavy presence in Venezuela, and it was mostly economic. They were benefiting from the drug sales, and not just drugs, but they had other businesses in Venezuela as well. And so Hezbollah was getting a significant portion of its budget every year from illicit activities aimed at the United States in Venezuela. That just got cut off. Now, if Iran wants Hezbollah to survive, Iran is going to have to send them more money than they are sending them. And Iran doesn't really have the money to do that right now. So they're going to have to make some really tough decisions. And it looks like Israel might be getting ready to go back into Lebanon and finish the job with Hezbollah once and for all. So we'll have to wait and see. So yeah, now China and Iran are probably not going to be able to buy Venezuelan crude at a discount anymore if the United States does what President Trump says they're going to do, and American oil companies come in, redevelop the Venezuelan oil fields, and start pumping out lots of crude. They won't be sanctioned anymore. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. They won't be sanctioned anymore, and hey, Eric, ¿me puede traer un copo de agua, por favor? Um, so if they're not under sanctions anymore, then Russia and China won't be able to. Well, I mean, Russia wasn't getting any oil from Venezuela. China was. China won't be able to buy it at a discount anymore, and that's going to increase their costs. China's economy is already not in a good way, so it's definitely something to be watching for. Uh, will you be live on CBN News today as well? Thank you for sharing what's happening there. Probably not today, but tomorrow we're looking at going live on CBN News. We'll have to wait and see. Uh, Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. And folks, let me just tell you, number one, please make sure you're subscribed to this channel. If you're not subscribed yet, it really helps the channel if you do subscribe and hit that notification bell. You can get notified when we're about to go live. That's number one. Number two, if you want to support the work we do, I mean, this is obviously expensive, bringing a team of people to Colombia to be on the ground and report for you what's going on right here. Gracias, amigo. Uh, it's it's expensive to do that. You can, the best way to support our team is to go to chuckholton.com and become an annual supporter over there. When you become a supporter at chuckholton.com, you get access to extra content, behind the scenes stuff, early access to some of the videos we put up, and monthly phone calls with me. So I recommend that you do that. I love getting to know and become friends with the people who watch so faithfully. And so appreciate you very much. So, yes, I am in Cucuta, Colombia today. Right now, I've got another hit in about 6 minutes, and then I'm going to be going down to the border area. And I may go live again from down there tonight if there's anything we're talking about, or I'll just make a video and we'll put that up for supporters over at chuckholton.com. So, anyway, thank you all for watching. I appreciate all of you very much. And we will see you again next time. Take care.